Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase them all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. Today, we are taking a deeper look into what is the deal with California.
This is a topic that I'm super passionate about, and honestly, since we started the podcast, this is something that I've been waiting to talk about.
I think passionate about this topic is an understatement for you.
And you know who's more passionate, actually?
I feel like it's going to be our guest, Zach Norton.
So Zach Norton is the head athletic trainer at Indian Springs High School in San Bernardino, and he's actually the first full-time certified athletic trainer for that school district.
That's awesome. I think that's, a positive sign of, where athletic training's going. That's awesome.
He's also the owner and director of a nonprofit organization called the Lance and Shield Association, which is aimed to assist CBU athletic training students in the efforts to become certified.
Which, by the way, is his alma mater.
He is also part of the CATA managing board. We didn't just pull some guy off the side of the road to talk to you about what's going on in California. Even
more important, he is also the chair of the California Legislative Action Team. So he really is in this battle.
As you'll find out later in this episode is so action-packed, which is so exciting for me. And we even have ideas for you guys to get involved, especially if you're California.
I think it's time that we give the floor to Zach.
So not many people think about what goes in legally into the definition of athletic training and the practice. And not many people consider that athletic trainers are actually volunteering their time to push for different legislation for athletic trainers. So what is your role and how did you get involved in these legislative efforts for athletic training?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of captured a good point. Everything that we do outside of actual athletic training is volunteer work, right? So it's really just who wants to step up and help in every aspect that we have. So I was always really pumped about legislative efforts. It was one of those things where I didn't know much about athletic training getting started. And then when I did, I realized oh, wow, we don't have a lot of what other states have in California. So I always knew there was a need there, but I always just kind of looked from afar. So a couple of my mentors, Nick and Heather Harvey, who live out here in Redlands now with us, they were people that I learned from, and they were heavily involved with CATA, and Nick was doing a lot of stuff with governmental affairs. So basically, I just kind of saw what they were doing, and I was just trying to figure out, I'd love to help if you guys ever need me or whatever. And it was kind of serendipitous. The former LAT chair had to step away before her term was over. So it was kind of it had to have been in December. And as you guys probably know, our Hit the Hill event is in February. So there's a really short time frame for a lot of logistics that goes into it. So they were just looking for a sucker, and they got me. But yeah, so all that passion that I had, I basically put my name forward to the managing board and said, look, hey, I'm interested. If you guys will have me, I'd love to help out. And essentially the managing board voted on it and they wanted me to help out. So, kind of stepped into this role as LAT, and a lot of it was just kind of learning as I was going. And thankfully I have my mentors so close by. Nick and Heather Harvey are actually really good friends of ours too. So the informal learning about everything that is governmental affairs was actually extremely helpful.
So yeah, what is actually the difference between the Legislative Action Team, or the LAT, and the Governmental Affairs Committee?
Good question. There's actually a lot of confusion in that. So essentially the Legislative Action Team is the grassroots efforts to help the governmental affairs. So the way I like to kind of think of it is governmental affairs is this umbrella that's basically just trying to get anything that's going to support athletic trainers, or anything that can potentially help our patient population. That's what governmental affairs works on. They're the big pictures. They're the ones that talk to our lobbyists. They're the ones that talk to legislators. And then what the Legislative Action Team is, we actually work with the GAC, but we're the grassroots people, right? So as you guys can imagine, I don't even know off the top of my head, but a lot of legislators in California. There's no way that the GAC and the GAC committee could actually have one-on-one conversations. Plus, to be frank, most legislators won't really care. If coming from Redlands and I'm going to a legislator in Orange County, I'm not voting for him. What do I have to offer other than information? So what the LAT does is we try and recruit individuals that it's honestly a really good spot to get your feet wet. So if you've never done anything before, it's a good place to start. So you can meet your legislators, you can, get those meetings and just kind of talk about hey, here's what we need. But then also there's now an actual community member that's like actually part of the district saying like, hey, I'm part of your community. I want to help out. We're doing this blood drive, and how can I do X, Y, or Z? And also, happenstance that we also want licensure. So it's just one of those things that there's a lot of working together, but legislative action team is essentially just the grassroots efforts.
Nice. That's awesome. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about Hit the Hill. What exactly is Hit the Hill Day, and what does it entail putting an event like that together?
So you got to keep in mind, Randy's actually never been to a Hit the Hill Day.
I have not.
But I think I've been to 6.
You have been to a lot.
So we're on 2 different spectrums here.
Well, that's true. I mean, Sandra, you've always been better than Randy in every way, shape, or form. This is just another.
I would totally agree with that, by the way.
Randy definitely married up, Sandra, so you're killing it.
I tell her that all the time.
Yeah. So Hit the Hill is basically the big legislative push that we have every year. So usually it happens in February, which if you've been to CATA, it's that same weekend. And that usually falls towards the end of February, more or less. So what the Hit the Hill event is, athletic trainers that go to the symposium, and basically anyone that's in the area that wants to support, we have an entire day where we just spend time on the hill. We get a room that we essentially rent out, and we have meetings. We meet with legislators. And what we'll try and do is, this is a really good way for students to get involved too, because most of the time, like, Hit the Hill is really a place for beginners to kind of just see how things work, but also those seasoned vets to kind of show those new people, like, this is how you can help. And we sit in a meeting. So if the 3 of us were in the same district, we'd go meet with, Assembly person James Ramos is one of the people that represents my area. We'd sit in a meeting with him or one of his staffers, and they'd say, all right, well, why don't you tell us why you're here? We say, well, we as athletic trainers, we're healthcare professionals that deal with patient care, mainly in the athletic setting, but we're kind of branching out to some different things, and we don't have the protection that we feel that we need, so we want to get licensure. And this bill that we're going to be putting forward here in the next couple of months, or that's going to be working its way through the Assembly or Senate, depending on how it starts, is something that we'd like your support on. And we'd love to just sit here and answer questions. So it's basically a way for the athletic trainers that, all you do is clinic work potentially, but it's the one time that you could potentially help with those grassroots efforts, meet with the legislator, and really make an impact. The whole point of that day, to be honest, isn't necessarily to get things done. It's to just show the strength and the numbers of the profession, of how many people there are, and how much we care and how much we actually want this. And, when we have those big numbers, it really does help.
And something I've noticed from going over the years and meeting with some of those legislators is they know who we are every year when we come back.
Yeah.
And they know that we come every year because of the numbers that we have and the people who are just so passionate going up on the hill.
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things, right? Like, if we didn't have this event, I guarantee most of the times these meetings happen, they'd be like, you're what? Oh, personal trainer? Yeah. I've been trying to lose weight, and it's just like, oh boy. But you nail the point. The more we go up there, the more these legislators, especially the seasoned ones, they know who we are. Right. And there's always going to be some kind of, not everyone's going to agree. That's just politics, right? Everyone has their own reasons for not wanting something one way or the other. But at the end of the day, they know who we are and they know what to expect. And sometimes those questions from our biggest non-supporters are actually get more and more like eloquent, and they actually are asking questions to try and understand and be like, well, maybe this is a good idea, right? Because sometimes when you go to a new legislator that just got, voted into office, they might ask those rookie questions of like, can you tell me what an athletic trainer is? Or like, wait, okay, so you work at a high school, so you're like a school nurse, right? So those rookie questions are like the way that I think, like to think of them. But then you have the people that have been around for a little while. And those are the ones that say, okay, so why would licensure assist athletic trainers more so than just if we did something like title protection, right? Because I've seen that in other states. So it's one of those things where we can start to give more information to those that have been around for a while and they know who we are, but we kind of build the relationships where we have good conversations.
Actually, you brought up a really good point. Can you touch upon the difference between what licensure is and title protection and why we're going for licensure?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different opinions on this, right? So there's basically multiple levels of legislation. So there's title protection, registration, licensure. So title protection essentially would just create the title of athletic trainer, certified athletic trainer, whatever it is that we put in that language. And only people that meet certain criteria can call themselves that. So what title protection would do, which I do think could have a small benefit, but all it would do would really say, if you're going to hire an athletic trainer, so for instance, my school district, if you're going to create a new position and you're going to call them a certified athletic trainer, they have to meet this criteria, but that's all it would do. So if, let's say, I work at San Bernardino City Unified, but let's say Redlands Unified, they wanted to hire someone that wasn't an athletic trainer, they can just call them like a sports medicine specialist. And technically, it wouldn't be against the law, right? So the good part of it is it stops the muddying of waters of individuals that haven't passed their BOC or haven't been certified or let their certification lapse continue to call themselves athletic trainers and get those positions, because in California, that's a big deal. Anyone can call themselves an athletic trainer if they want to. So that's the benefit there. The unfortunate part, and this is where licensure comes in, is there's literally nothing else that it helps with. So what licensure does is not only does it create the criteria of title protection, so it says you have to meet these criteria, but it also creates what's called a scope of practice. And the scope of practice is essentially what athletic trainers can do in the state of California. So, this is going to vary from state to state, but I remember at one time I worked an internship over in Orlando over a summer, and talking to them, CBU is very manual therapy heavy, right? So everything that we learned, it's like, oh, you want to get better? Like, here's what you can do. But from what I recall, some people that were working there said that in their licensure, Florida isn't allowed to do manual therapies, right? It's just what they had to give up. So things change all the time. Exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting. Things change all the time, though. So, I mean, they could, try and amend that licensure language to say, well, we want to add it now because the BOC says that we're trained here and we're going to have new athletic trainers doing X, Y, or Z. So every state is going to have a little bit of a difference. But licensure essentially would create a scope of practice. And unfortunately, because of that, sometimes it gets some pushback from other professions that are like, well, hold on, wait, you're trying to do this, we do this, so we gotta, make sure that there's not too much overlap. Otherwise, you're going to be taking away some of my patient population, taking away some money. There's a lot of things that go into that. But unfortunately, those of the listeners that don't know, we are dead last, right? Like California is the only, I'm going to say the only territory in the entire United States, because Washington, D.C. was able to get it together. And I'm pretty sure American Samoa and the other territories that we have, they have some kind of protection. California's got nada. So we are really working hard to try and get something in place to be able to protect those individuals that want to work here, to make sure that an athletic trainer is an athletic trainer and not just some person that took a sports med class in high school and said, yeah, no, I'm good, I can work that job. So that's the difference, more or less.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when you start talking about the fight for licensure and scope of practice, it starts this like little turf war between different professions, and be like, oh, well, here's our scope, that's coming into our scope. How many organizations typically support us, and then also which ones oppose us?
Yeah, so I mean, you bring up a really good point, right? And it's unfortunate that that's kind of the mindset, right? I actually don't like to think of it as a turf war, right? And those of us that have gone to school, and especially more recently, the whole like interdisciplinary practice of collaborating with other healthcare professionals should be the mindset that we kind of work our way towards. So I like to avoid using the mindset of a turf war, right? It is what it is, but there is a lot of ability for us to collaborate. So opposition is going to vary depending on the language that we have. And a lot of times, and this is what the Governmental Affairs Committee does really well, is we actually do our best to hear what the reasons for opposition are. And usually they're pretty minor, right? They're like, oh, well, in here you mentioned that, you work under a physician and you need to like, and this is completely made up, but you need to work in a hospital office. And the nurses are like, well, hold on, like, if we hire more people for, in a hospital setting, that could potentially bring down pay. So that's why we're opposed. But the benefit is, if we see this and we realize like this is really a non-point, we can get rid of that. We can essentially change things up to try and appease people. So opposition comes and goes, right? And it's all just a matter of having conversations with those individuals, as well as the author of the person that decides to write our bill, essentially, and just try and figure out how we can appease everybody and like say, how can we still do this? And then some of our biggest supporters, honestly, we have so many. It's like if you were to look at a page of the people listed out, opposition would be very small, and our supporters are so big. We have CIF, we have NFHS, we have all of the Kings in California, whether it's the Sacramento Kings or the Los Angeles Kings, doesn't matter. A lot of pro teams support us. CMA, NCAA. So we have like big names, and then that's just to name some of the big ones, right? We have countless high schools, a bunch of other individuals that support us, and it's nice to be able to know that we really do have the support, but it really is getting the legislators that really don't know that information and saying like, people want this. This is something that's not like a completely outlandish idea. The people that we work with think that it's a good idea. We just need to be able to convey that to them.
I know that a lot of times we have CPTA that, or the California Physical Therapy Association, who oppose us. But at the national level, there's the American Physical Therapy Association that is actually working hand in hand with our National Athletic Trainers Association. Do you know why there's a disconnect there?
You know, a lot of it sometimes comes down to leadership. Like being on the CATA managing board, we're given a lot of leeway in regards to how we want to run our state organization. And NATA is going to drop some stuff down and say, hey, this is some things that we need you to do. But we don't necessarily need to do everything the way that the national organization does. So I think that's where the disconnect is. And California is a big state. We make a lot of money, right? Like as a state, there's a lot of money to be had. And I think one of the things about the CPTA argument is, unfortunately, physical therapists and athletic trainers, that's probably where there's going to be the most overlap. And I think there's concern there. But just this year, we're only 3 months in, right? Just this year, APTA and NATA came out with that joint statement that were like, yeah, licensure is extremely important for athletic trainers. It should be the standard. And there's nothing that we can do to necessarily change the CPTA's mind except for trying to work with them, which we have done amazing. Mike Chizar was our former GAC chair who just stepped down this year, and now Nick Harvey took over. But that's literally majority of the meetings are just working with CPTA, like, you know, how can we move this along? How can we, it's not necessarily get support, right? Because that's always kind of a stretch, but how do we limit the opposition that you have? So the APTA coming out has been awesome. And all I can hope is that the CPTA and the CATA are able to kind of figure out like, there's a legit collaboration opportunity here. And if you go and talk to any physical therapist off the street, not the, you know, the management of CPTA, but most physical therapists are like, yeah, my fiance just shared a story. She went to Washington, D.C., and one of her family friends was a PT and was like, hey, what do you do for plantar fasciitis? And it's like, you're a PT, you know how to answer that. But the point she made was, yeah, but you guys work a little bit like further along than us, you know? So those athletic injuries where it's like, you're ready to go back and do like sports or athletic or high level activity, we usually will hand off the patient to you. And then you guys take care of the, you know, the higher level things. So it's a prime example of collaboration. And I think sometimes there's a disconnect with the management of an entire organization where they don't necessarily see the boots on the ground. And I think that's where the disconnect is. And all we can do is continue working with them, right? Because I mean, I have nothing against physical therapists, and the CPTA in itself is an awesome organization that honestly, I think if we figured out how to work together, it would be great for both of us. It's just a matter of making sure the people that actually make those decisions understand that too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's how, like, when people ask me about like why is there that disconnect, and like, you know, why does it seem like PTs and ATs don't like each other? And I tell people that that's not what it is in reality. Like clinically, we have such a high mutual respect for
Yeah.
each of us, and you know, they have their strengths just like we have our strengths, and we need to work collaboratively in order to allow for the best outcome. So I just explained that difference and that kind of divide that seems to be there is not what you see in the real world. That's really higher up, and like what you said, in these managing boards and those decisions. So
Yeah, we really talk a lot. It's become a theme about in our podcast about being part of the healthcare team, and we really talk about interprofessional collaboration.
Yeah, it's important. I think the old mindset, the old school mindset was probably the turf war, thing that you brought up, Randy. It was, well, I'm an athletic trainer, so I work in athletics, right? And that's all that it was. But now we're realizing there is so much benefit to athletic trainers outside of just the traditional athletic setting. We have individuals that, the industrial setting. We have people that are helping in PT clinics, right? Like we have people that are there. We have people that are working directly with physicians. So it's no longer just the traditional athletic setting. And I think that's one of the reasons that the mindset has changed. It's not just this is my domain, right? This is my precious, and nothing outside of this matters to me. We're healthcare professionals that fill in a gap of an entire healthcare team. And I think that we see it work super effectively at the professional level because they have the money to be able to create those teams. And honestly, now more so at the collegiate level, especially at the D1, man. Like, and Randy, I'm pretty sure you're a big Oregon fan, right?
yes, I am.
Oh my God. I saw the YouTube video of their sports medicine facility and it blew my mind. I was like, this is better than some of the professional setups. Like they had the nutrition bar, they had a hot and cold, like in-ground whirlpool. They had like a dentist on call. I was like, oh my God, this is collaboration right here. Nutritionists, dentists, they had like chiropractors there, physical therapists, athletic trainers, they had physicians. I was like, this is it. This is the Mecca. This is what everyone should try and obtain. And I think we're getting there, right? And I think it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And I think once everybody gets the right idea of how this can be a benefit to everybody, is when everything's going to happen and everyone's going to walk away with this extremely satisfied.
So this year is actually a little bit different because you were telling us that we actually don't have a licensure bill this year. How can individuals still be effective in helping these legislative efforts?
Yeah, the licensure bill this year was a bit of a bummer, but it kind of made sense, right? So like 2020 sucks. I think we can all agree on that. COVID really kind of threw a wrench in a lot of stuff. So because it happened in March, it was so early in the legislative year. That's one of the reasons that our licensure bill the momentum just kind of stopped. There were more important things. And then this year we're 3 months in, and although we're getting better, things are not necessarily where they need to be. So I think the legislative efforts, selfishly, I would have liked a bill, but unselfishly, knowing what is important for everybody, not just athletic trainers, but just like the population of California, licensure wasn't important for us right now. And it's not a matter, like I said, it's not a matter of if, it's when. So this year we weren't able to field the licensure bill. A lot of changes happened 2020 because it was an election year. We had a lot of movement. So our author was Rob Bonta last year. And he was amazing at helping us, but this year he's actually trying to go for the California Attorney General's position. So he hasn't necessarily put a lot of effort into the bills that don't completely encompass helping the entire California population. And one of the reasons that we actually pay our lobbying firm is to kind of give us like an inside track on like what the legislators are thinking, right? Because we're all volunteers. We don't know any better, but they work in the Capitol, so they know. And some of the feeling was a licensure bill right now, when there's more important things, probably just wouldn't be the best for us to try and field. So we can use this entire year to essentially make our push next year even stronger. So one of the things that we really want to encourage people to do is, one, join the legislative action team, right? This is one of the best ways for people to get involved and to assist the organization as a whole. But in that, a lot of times the message has always been, I'm an athletic trainer, this is why licensure is important, right? Which, I mean, I totally get there's an argument there, but it doesn't matter this year. What I think we really need to do is kind of show how we support our community as an athletic trainer, or just as an individual who happens to be an athletic trainer, right? And this is one of those views that I think that I'm bringing in as an LAT chair, is I kind of want to change that message. I want the main thing to be, how do we support our community, right? Whether it's, for National Athletic Training Month, one of our region directors, Adrienne Wilson down in San Diego, she put together an entire blood drive, digital blood drive. It's all virtual. You sign up for a time to go give blood. But that's a perfect example of helping your community. And she invited a legislator, like, hey, give blood. Everybody can give blood. That's easy. So it's one of those things where it's like you can help your community, right? And you just happen to plug in there like, I'm an athletic trainer. Thanks for your support in the past on Licensure. I'm running a community event. I'd love it if you'd be able to help us. But that's what I want to change the message to, is how can you support your community? You know, if there's a food bank going on, or, you know, a food drive, help organize some of that. Talk to your legislator about what are some issues in the community. Like, if we have a lot of homeless population and, you know, it's getting cold out, maybe I could do a blanket drive. I did that once at CBU. Like, there are so many things that we can do to help the community. And I think it's important for us to get out of the like licensure 24/7. I'm an athletic trainer. We need licensure. I'm going to have a meeting with you every month to tell you the exact same thing. It's like, at some point that's just going to get annoying, right? Like, you don't want to do that over and over again. You want to be effective. You want to show them that, hey, I can help you just as much as you can help me, but I don't need your help right now. So let me help you. And then now all of a sudden you're an asset. You're an ally to that legislator. And if you believe in their politics enough, you can even help them on their campaign. Everybody needs to get reelected, right? So that's the message that I want to be able to have everybody understand, not only this year, but just for now on, is be an asset to the community, right? As athletic trainers, sometimes we are like the person that talks to the athletes the most, or talks to our patient population the most. And we have a, you know, inside scoop on just the happenings of what's going on, because they spend time in our clinic. They're trying to get better. They're doing rehab. You know, they're getting an evaluation done, whatever the case may be. But we talk to them. Like, we have so much contact with our patient populations, more so than most other healthcare professionals. So we have kind of a pulse on the needs of our community. And I think it's important for us to be effective and say, well, shoot, yeah, I can help out with that. So that's one of the things that I'm really hoping this year, especially, but, you know, moving forward, I think that's going to be a really important message for not only our LAT, but just our CAT membership to try and figure out how to do.
Yeah, and I think if COVID has taught us anything, it is the importance of community. In your opinion, how do you think COVID and the athletic trainer's response and the versatility of the athletic trainer will change the view of some of the opposition, or even legislators, in how they view athletic trainers and licensure?
Yeah, changing the view. That's a good question. It just, some of it boils down to what we're allowed to do, right? The hospitals being short-staffed earlier in this year kind of showed a spot for athletic trainers to be able to help out, and some were able to, but some weren't. I know I signed up for the health corps volunteer stuff when everything happened, but unfortunately, because we don't have licensure, they were like, no, we're good. Like, we're going to pass on that. So that's kind of a bummer. So a lot of it is bringing attention to those that are able to help. So up north, Gina Biviano, who was actually the former LAT chair, and can't remember what hospital system she works for, but they kind of do a outreach setup. So they're assigned to high schools, but they also work for the hospital, and they're assigned to high schools. They were able to help with like COVID testing and screening and like doing some of these things where we want to be able to highlight those things and be like, who has been able to help, right? Because some people have asked and we just haven't been able to, but those that have, we want to bring attention to it and say, like, exactly what you said, we can be an asset. Like, we don't have to, you know, go in and hand a scalpel to a surgeon, but we can definitely help with other things that we're trained in, right? There's a lot of stuff that athletic trainers can do. There's a lot of stuff that we learn in school, and we can fill in some gaps and help when it's needed. And I think this year was a prime example of the ability to be able to step up if they'd allow us. And unfortunately, it was just a matter of they didn't know who we were or what we could do. And it took an individual like saying, this is what I can do, but it's not universal, right? It's not, you talk to one person and they're like, oh, what might you change? It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess you can help us, but you know, over in Orange County, that conversation may not happen. So yeah, I'm hoping the view changes. I'm hoping that this unfortunate situation will bring attention to the fact of, you know, collaboration. How can we help each other? And I think there's room for growth there for sure.
Yeah.
Was there any, actually, from Randy, from your perspective, since you have been not as involved in the Hit the Hill days, but still interested in legislative efforts, from your side, how are you feeling? Is there anything that we need to cover?
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is some people may not understand, like, we talk about like getting licensure and they're just like, okay, well, get it. How does that process look? How do we exactly get licensure?
This is a doozy. This is fun too, actually, because believe it or not, I didn't actually figure out the process until literally Monday. And the only reason I knew it is because I was like, I'm probably going to get asked this question, so I should probably have a pretty good understanding. And I've been on the damn GAC for a year, right? So the roadmap is actually relatively straightforward. So the way that it works is essentially you want something, whatever it is, you want it. And then from there, what you do is you try and find an author that is like, I actually think that's a good idea. I want that too now. So they are the official author. Whether or not we write the language doesn't matter. We usually help them, and it's up to them what they actually want to present. So we become what's called a sponsor, right? So the CATA sponsors a bill. So there's two possible ways that it can happen. One is it's introduced by an assembly person, which is usually what happens, or it can be introduced as a Senate individual. Both legislators, obviously, Assembly, Senate. There's more Assembly people than there are Senate members. Anyway, let's get into the weeds. So we want something, we find an author, we're just going to assume that it's an assembly person. So what happens then is the assembly person submits it and they say, I want this to be a bill. And then it goes to essentially to a committee that figures out what committee it goes to. So the usual order for us is we'll go to Arts, Sports, and Tourism Committee, because sports, I guess. Then we'll go to Business and Professions. Business and Professions essentially is who determines like licensure boards and just like things about a new regulated occupation happen. So that's actually probably one of the biggest committees that we go through. So it'll go through an assembly, Business and Professions. Then it'll go to appropriations, which basically just figures out like, can we afford this? How much is it going to cost, et cetera, et cetera. After that, it goes to the assembly floor. So all of the California assembly people will vote on whether or not they want this. If it passes there, then it goes over to the Senate side. Then it goes to a Senate B&P, so that same Business and Professions on the Senate side. Then it goes to appropriations on the Senate side. And then it goes to the Senate floor for the senators to vote on. If they approve it, it goes to the governor's desk. Technically goes back to a Senate. It doesn't matter. After the Senate votes on it and they say, yeah, we want this too, then it goes to the governor's desk. And then the governor's desk is essentially, he either signs it into law and says, let it be so, or he vetoes it. And he says, I don't think this is appropriate for whatever reason. And then usually it ends there. So yeah, that's more or less the quick synopsis. So want something, author, bunch of committees, vote for assembly, Senate committees, Senate votes, governor, yay or nay is the way that it works out.
I like that flow chart you just added at the end.
I think it definitely shows that it's just not a straightforward process as far as there's a lot of hands that are in this to make that decision. It's not just like, oh, well, just go vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot that goes into stuff like that and like rewriting and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I've definitely learned, right? It's never as straightforward as you'd like it to be. Politics is called politics for a reason. And there's a lot of power in the committees, right? Like our author can have a lot of pull, but you know, if a committee doesn't want to hear it and they don't even want to vote on it, there's other things that may have their attention. They may not prioritize it, and there's nothing we can do about it except for like beg and please and be like, it's really important, we promise. But if they don't see it as important, then I mean, there's nothing that we can do, which is why it's really important for the grassroots efforts of individuals to talk to the legislators and say, no, this is important, and here's why. So that way, when it gets to that point, it's not us fighting for it, it's the other legislators and saying like, no, this actually is important. Like at the very least, you should hear it to vote on it, to hear opposition, to hear support. Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into a bill becoming a law. And I feel like I should be like a little paper on the Capitol Hill, like doing the old.
There you go.
What is it? Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes. I'm just a bill.
Yeah, it's an interesting process. And one of the cool things is our lobbying firm. We actually just got a new lobbying firm, which I don't know if your listeners would know, but essentially a lobbyist is an individual that we pay money to that understands the ins and outs and can help us get those meetings more frequently than us just trying to get someone on the phone as an athletic trainer that works at University of Redlands or Indian Springs High School. But they are able to help us set up these meetings and help us understand the process and help us navigate these things and figure out like, hey, like maybe you guys should focus some effort on these senators or this assembly person. Because it helps us who, like we've talked about before, at the end of the day, everybody on the managing board, this is not our job. Like, this is not that we don't take a dime of money of salary to do what we do. We're volunteers. We have to work our other jobs. So we don't know the ins and outs. So we have to hire people that do. So we work hard for our membership, but we don't know the legislative efforts, you know, as well as a lobbyist would, because that's what they're paid to do. So, you know, we got to work our, we got to support our weaknesses in some ways. And I think that's one of the cool things about what we are trying to do is we're able to kind of help fill those gaps or those weaknesses and try and figure out how we can help our membership as a whole.
Man, now I'm just excited for our next Hit the Hill Day.
Right? Yeah, I know. And I'm actually pretty pumped too, because I love Hit the Hill, right? It's a cool time to get together with everybody, but I'm hoping too that we can, you know, this year, obviously we'd love everything to get back to normal, but one of the ideas that I had, and I think it'd be really effective, is to do like a digital Hit the Hill Day, right? Where you can actually, like, instead of it just being a day and trying to mash everything up on a Monday, like we give a week and you meet with legislators throughout that week, and you essentially do what we do in a Hit the Hill room, which is say, hey, let them know what we're looking for, let them know how they can help us, answer any questions. But we've realized that with this unfortunate circumstance of 2020 and everything being digital, but there is something to say that it could be effective. So I'm hoping that's something that we can add in addition to Hit the Hill, to not stop all of our strong momentum in February and actually carry that into whether it be the spring, summer, or late in the fall when that legislative cycle is ending. So
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we could definitely get more athletic trainers availability then, because you don't have to travel all the way up to Northern California. I know usually Randy he's always been traveling that weekend. He's been at the D1 for so long.
Yeah.
That just that February working with track in the spring is just really a tough time, but making it digital would really, really be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you know, to be honest, I did this all because Randy hasn't shown up, so I don't want to give him any more excuses.
I figured this was a red carpet.
You know what I
for
mean?
me.
It's like, look, Randy, I'm tired of the excuses. I want to see you. I want to have a beer. If we got to do it digitally, then we can do it digitally, man.
Yeah, we might have to.
You know, I'm tired of these excuses. I want you to show up, support the organization. No, but yeah, it's one of those things where we realize that it's a convenience factor. We do Hit the Hill during our symposium because we're there, right? People are already there. So but unfortunately, because it's on a Monday, usually it's a working day, we're asking people to volunteer their time, and some people can do that, some people can't, and that's totally understandable. It's part of the profession. So if we're able to add an aspect of doing this digitally and say, dude, you don't even need to go anywhere. You got a phone, maybe some AirPods or some headphones so you can talk, have a meeting wherever. If you're in Hawaii, because Randy, you get to travel all these cool places, but it doesn't matter where you are. You know, you can get on the call and you can still have a conversation, because at the end of the day, it's not where you're doing it or if you're in front of them. It's just a matter of having the conversation. And we've learned that there's a lot of ways that we can have these conversations outside of flying all the way up to Sacramento. So
super, super exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Pumped.
So one of my favorite parts is always talking about action items on our podcast. And this is obviously a huge thing that everyone can help out with, especially in California. And I know you already talked about the legislative action team, which has the word action in it, which is so exciting to me because obviously I love action. Can you tell us a little bit actually about what it means to be on the legislative action team and what kind of commitment that would be? And then you can also talk about how our listeners can sign up for that.
Yeah. So the cool thing about LAT is it's fairly passive, right? It's a lot of just like information coming to you. And then there's some calls to action that we like to call it. Action really is the word of the day. So as LAT chair, what I do is I sit on the Governmental Affairs Committee. And what I do is, you know, while we're going through this, we're figuring out like, hey, what needs to get done? Essentially, an LAT member, as you sign up, right, all you're doing is you're saying, I want to be in the know of what's going on before the rest of the membership and how can I help? right? So those, if you want to sign up, that's essentially what it is. You're the grassroots effort that honestly is one of the strongest parts of us getting anything done in California. It's the people that sign up for this.
Yeah, you guys get really cool emails from Zach. I have been enjoying them.
Oh yeah, I like to make them fun, and I also screw up sometimes, so I have to send out correction emails too. But it's a really good time. So what we'll do is we'll do a call to action, and we'll say, hey, we need you guys to meet with your legislator. If anybody's in these districts, we might hit up like very specific individuals and say, hey, this person, your legislator is on this committee, and this committee is going to be voting in the next week or two. I want you to try and have a meeting with them to try and field any questions they might have and just kind of talk about the importance of why licensure, is needed. And then outside of that, what we'll try and do is we'll try and just send updates, right? So some individuals actually have really good relationships with their legislators. Like, they are all about meeting with their legislators. They are very involved in their community. So they're like, hey, look, I want to talk to you about, and you don't have to always go as an athletic trainer, right? You can go and be like, hey, I noticed that our schools aren't getting enough funding, or they got these old ass books, and we how do we get them more money, right? There's so many things that legislators can do, but then you build this relationship, and it's like, hey, we've been meeting for a while, but now I want to talk about licensure. Have you heard about our bill? First and foremost, right? Just letting them know we have a bill, we exist, and we have authored a bill this year. And have you heard about it? No? Okay, well, I'd love to just kind of bring some attention to it. Here's some of the merits of it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We'll meet again next month, and to build that relationship. So it's very passive and you get information, but there will be calls to action. And we would like to see, going back to the community thing that I talked about earlier, is try and build a relationship with the legislator and their office and just figure out how you can help the community, right? Because at the end of the day, the legislator, like what a legislator is he represents his entire area. Right. So he wants his area to do well, whether it's like, testing well, or making sure that his schools have money, or making sure that, his police officers are paid, and response times for ambulances are good. And there's so many things that go into it, but they can't do it themselves. They need us just as much as we need them. So the LAT essentially just kind of scratches that itch, and it says, I want to meet with the legislators and tell them, the merits of an athletic trainer and why licensure is important, but also you can assist your community as well. So I think it's a really good place to kind of get started, because like you don't do as much as other committees might have you do, and you're not on a committee. So you're not expected to sit in these, like, I mean, probably a lot of us have Zoom fatigue, and here we are in Google Meet, right? But you don't necessarily need to like have the back and forth. If you don't have a lot of good ideas, and that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can still help. Whereas sometimes when you're on a committee, you're expected to, give some back and forth, come up with these ideas. How can we do this or this? And I love that information from LAT members, but it's not expected. So I like to think of the legislative action team as a good place to just kind of get your feet wet and figure out, hey, I want to help the organization, but I don't know how. I don't know where to start. LAT is the way to do it for sure. So that's more or less what it looks like. I kind of hope I answered more or less what you were looking for, but yeah, LAT is definitely the place to start if you're not really sure how to help the organization.
Yes, for our listeners, we actually have a link that Zach gave us, and
Boom.
so we'll put that in
There.
the show notes below. Where
Is it
Zach's
there?
pointing.
Is it here?
Yes,
Is it,
there.
Yes, sign up. It's a Google form, so don't be freaked out, but it's fantastic. It's nice. I created it myself. I changed nothing about the color, so it's still purple, but
and it's action packed.
Action packed for sure. Lots of good questions. I get to collect your email address and email you about important legislative things. It's great. So, boom, right there.
And if you're listening to this not in 2021, which is probably going to happen eventually,
Well, I hope
when we get to a year after 2021, you guys can just email us at atcornerds@gmail.com, and we'll point you in the right direction to get a new link.
Yeah. And we update it every year. Yeah, exactly. This is beautiful. I love it. Yeah, the new form is going to be on something like futuristic and super cool, but they're going to know. When you contact them, they're going to know. Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm actually excited about too is the CATA managing board is always looking to evolve. And so we're actually exploring some ways of interacting a little bit better with our membership. So I'm excited about things to come. Can't really talk about them too much yet. But I am excited about the potential of being able to interact a little bit more with membership and be able to, not making a dreary Google form every single time. Possibly just having some ways of people just getting involved. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully that comes out by 2021. But we'll see.
Ooh, some secrets.
Secrets. Got to keep the audience wanting more, right? Isn't that one of the merits of a good podcast? Secret death.
So you guys, I hope after listening to that, you are just as passionate as I am about changing the situation we have here in California. And I think one of the biggest points that we actually didn't touch upon is that it also means that people, and I mean athletic trainers from other states who lose their license can come here and practice legally, which is so dangerous for the safety of our youth sports, high school sports, anywhere who's hiring these uncertified, unlicensed athletic trainers.
Absolutely. And I think what was very important to me was the fact of just learning the process and understanding, what goes into making this bill, and like, how do we get it to become law, and what's the landscape of support and opposition, and how that affects us. And hopefully people outside the state kind of understand, like, this is what we're going against. It's not that we're not trying. It's just, it's been a long road.
So if you are in California and you want to get involved in the legislative action team, we have a link for you in our show notes. If you're listening to this in 2021, if you're listening to it in a year in the future, then please email us. We'll get you a new link, because there's a new link every year. If you're not in California, we want to hear what legislation is like in your state. So head over to our Facebook group. Unfortunately, you can't comment on a podcast, but we do post episode threads in our Facebook group. So make sure you head over to facebook.com/group/atcornerpodcast, or just search AT Corner Community.
Yeah, I would definitely be fascinated to learn how other states do things, because not everyone does licensure. There's also registration and stuff like that. So
And title protection.
So I'd be very interested to see how each state, does things a little bit different.
If you guys are new, we do every other episode as education or stories. This one was an education episode, a super awesome education episode. And next week, we are back to our stories. So if you ever want to submit your story, you totally can. Head over to our Instagram stories. That's usually where we post what our upcoming stories are. And that's when we do the call for stories. So make sure you keep an eye out for those. Also, because it's National Athletic Training Month, we have an Instagram story for you guys to fill out. It's Mad Libs. So make sure you go fill that out, grab your friend, grab your athlete, have them give you some nouns, give them some verbs, all those things, fill it out, tag us, we'll repost it, and happy National Athletic Training Month.
Yes, I cannot wait to see the wacky responses that we are going to get.
I just love it. It's been so fun already. All right, Randy, you have anything else to add?
Nope, I think we're good to go. Happy National Athletic Training Month. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape.